Did I control what I can control? Yes. And this is the hard part, but this is the part that changed my life and changed how OCD impacts me, which is very minimal now, is that I can let go of the outcome. Welcome back to Happiness in Progress. I'm your host, Danielle Craig. I'm an Emmy Award winner, former journalist, mom, wife, and just a person looking for more joy in the everyday. This podcast is brought to you by the Mail Tribune. You can find more podcasts at mailtribune.com. As you know, at the end of this podcast, I always ask my guests to give us their secret for finding joy in the good, the bad, and the in-between. Well, here we are in the middle of a pandemic. Unfortunately, not the middle, the very beginning. We're finding ourselves in that in-between and that bad more often than the good. And I really want this podcast to be there for you to kind of help you find that steady ground. The last week, I took a break on putting out all my podcasts. I plan out my podcasts a month in advance. I had everything planned for you. I put the brakes on it and revised my entire schedule so that I could really offer you more tools and tips and just warmth, really, and love, so that through this hard time you can have real things that can help you get through it a little easier. So today I wanted to talk about control, really the loss of control, because that's what has happened to us. We have lost control. We have so little control in our lives right now. So I want to start this conversation about control with my diagnosis of obsessive compulsive disorder. So if there's anyone who wants to control something, it is me. I am actually diagnosed with OCD. And I'm going to kind of tell you about what that means. I've told you I have OCD. I haven't talked a lot of in depth about what that means is happening in my head. So we'll talk a little bit about that and how that applies to this situation and the tools you can take from it. So when you have OCD, one of the things that happens is basically, in my mind, all things end in my death or end in somebody's death. So, this is not just serious things. This is not just risky things. It's not like I'm jumping off a cliff, skydiving, or doing something really dangerous and thinking, oh, I could die. It's like I'm turning left and thinking, this left turn is going to make me die. Or it might be me thinking, if I put these pajamas on my child, they're going to die. Or if I take a flight at this time instead of this time, that's going to be the difference between life and death. So that's basically how OCD works in my mind. And all of those examples are from when I did not have OCD controlled and handled. And now I have so many tools that I use, and it helps me so much throughout my daily life. So as you're listening, I don't want you to think, oh no, poor Danielle. I'm not poor Danielle. I'm totally fine. I have learned a lot of tools. All of our brains work differently, and this just happens to be the chemical imbalance in my brain. Okay, now that I put that out of the way. So basically, what I have done to deal with that, to deal with this constant out of control in my mind and constant grasping at any control, grasping at controlling whether my house is going to burn down by touching the stove a certain amount of times. And I think we've all kind of heard OCD silly stories that kind of sound more funny than they are serious. But some of those things, like flipping the light switch up and down, that is the brain's just trying to get control of the situation. And the brain's like, yeah, you can totally control whether someone lives or dies if you just flick that light switch back and forth. And it's really what our brain is telling us. So one of the key things that I have done is learned to let go of control, which is really, really difficult, but it's a practice, and I'm going to give you my tool to do that. The very first thing is to recognize what you do have control of and what you don't have control of. So for OCD, my example for you is a house fire. So if I am afraid of a house fire, my brain is like, you gotta go turn the oven on and off 10 times consecutively, and then there won't be a house fire. So my logical brain can be like, well, that's not exactly how we prevent house fires. And so I can take in control what I can control. So what can I control to prevent a house fire? I can make sure that I have fire alarms. I can make sure that I have a fire extinguisher. I can make sure we even have a quick button in our home that we can just press with our alarm system. If there's a fire, we can press it, goes right to the fire department. What else can I do? I can make sure that I do shut the oven off, but not consecutively 10 times. I can just check it and say, I'm turning off the oven one time. And if I do all of these things, that's my due diligence. I'm doing what I can to prevent a fire. Does that necessarily mean that no fire will occur? No, there's a billion different things that could happen that would create a fire. I had friends one time, their house went up in flames because they had a lamp on their turtle, and the lamp and something else caused a fire in the home. Sometimes it's just a slew of different things that can happen in your home. But have I done everything in my control to prevent a house fire? Fire extinguisher, fire alarms. Did I make sure the oven was off one time? Yes. So that is what is within my control. Do I have control of the outcome? No, I don't have control of the outcome. I have control of my actions right now. Did I do them all? Yes. Did I control what I can control? Yes. And this is the hard part, but this is the part that changed my life and changed how OCD impacts me, which is very minimal now, is that I can let go of the outcome. Let go of the outcome. So what does this look like in a pandemic? You might think, why am I feeling really anxious? Why am I feeling really scared? And I would ask you to write down those things. Why am I, pacing around my house all day, trying to catch my breath and feeling on the verge of tears the entire day? Whatever it is however this is impacting you. I asked you guys on social media how it's impacting you, and so many of you are worried, nervous, fearful, anxious. The unknown is scary. So take a moment to kind of check in with yourself. Why are you feeling all of those feelings? What is it that you're afraid of? So take a moment to write those down. So you might be afraid of financial stability. You might be afraid that we're looking into a recession. You might be afraid that someone you love is going to get sick from coronavirus. You might be afraid that any one of those things, that your community isn't doing enough to keep your community safe, that your lawmakers aren't doing enough to keep your community safe. There's a ton of things you could be worried about. So take a moment, write what you're worried about. Then write that on the left side. And then on the right side, you can write what you can control in that situation. Do you have control of the outcomes when it comes to a recession? You do not have control of whether our country is going to be in a recession or not. You have a control of whether you're going to hoard your money or maybe spend a little bit of it, whatever you can spend, maybe a fraction of it on small businesses, supporting small businesses to at least get our economy moving a little bit. You have, let's say it's lawmakers. We do not have control over what our lawmakers are doing right now. But you know what you do have control of? You have control of writing them emails. I have already written emails to our lawmakers since this all started. You have control of tweeting them, of Facebook messaging them. If you're worried about running out of food and not being able to go to the grocery store, what can you control? You can control how you prepared already. So take a minute, not only to think about why you're scared, what you can't control, but really the important part is to do what you can control. Once you've gone through the steps of, okay, I can control that I have a backup plan to earn money. I can control that I've been working on this hobby and I'm going to try to kind of turn it into something that can make money, maybe even if it's a little bit of money right now, or maybe I can trade it for a service right now, or maybe I can do it complimentary right now and then get to a place where I can charge money when our economy rebounds. Whatever it is, you can start kind of thinking about those ideas, and that gives you some control back. Once you have realized what you have control of, again, you can let go of the outcome. We don't have control of the outcomes. I mean, as much as I wish we had control of the outcomes, we don't have control of the outcomes. Control what we can control. That's ourselves. That's our response. That's basically it. We can't even control our friends on Facebook when we're sharing, stop playing on playgrounds, stop going to the coast, stop going on walks with your friends in super overpopulated areas. We can't even control our friends when we're sharing our opinion. But what we can control is ourselves, our response, how we're showing up in the world. That's what we can control. My last tip is about finding a checkpoint person. It is really, really easy to spiral on all the things that can go wrong. It is really, really easy to just ride that wave of anxiety, ride that wave of being scared and nervous and fearful and just being paralyzed by it. Very, very easy to do that. But when you have a checkpoint person, this can help. So going back to my OCD, this was life-changing for me. I want you to, before I was able to hold a full-time career and be able to be a mom and handle my OCD, I was in college. It was very, very stressful for me, and my OCD was controlling my entire life. That's when I got diagnosed. I'll go more into what that looked like at some other point on the podcast, but everything was a worst case scenario. OCD told me everything was the worst case scenario. And one of the things I learned was to find a checkpoint person. And so in the beginning, that was my mom. And I would call her up and I would say, Mom, is it true if I go to this grocery store at noon, I'm going to die? Like there's going to be someone there with a gun and I'm going to be shot and it's going to be the end of my life. And she would say, no, that does not sound probable. And then I got married and that checkpoint person became my husband. My mom is still a checkpoint person, but then I would ask him, is it true if I put this sleeper on the baby instead of this sleeper, he's going to die overnight? And he would say, no, that's not true. That's your OCD. And then I would say, okay, great. And now I also have my cousins who I bounce things off of as well. And I'll say, is it true if I do XYZ, I'm going to face XYZ worst case scenario? And they'll be able to say, no, again, OCD. So I have 4 checkpoint people in my life right now, and it makes all of the difference. So if you can think of someone who can walk you back, maybe think of your most reasonable friend and someone who can be compassionate and understanding how you're feeling. Then go to them and say, hey, I'm having a really difficult time with this pandemic, and I need someone to bounce off some of my worst fears. Are you someone who I can confide in and who can then tell me, yeah, no, that's not going to happen. That's not probable. Or, maybe that does happen, but what do you have control of? Okay, so what are some of those concerns, those worst case scenarios you could be bringing to your friends? You could go to your friend and say, hey, I am really worried that this is the worst case scenario. This is apocalyptic world. We are soon going to have nothing and no phones and no technology and nothing. We're just be living off the land and, fighting each other like Mad Max. And then your person can say, I don't think that's probable. I don't think that's going to happen. But what could happen is X, Y, Z. Here's the ways you can prepare for the realistic scenarios out of what's going on right now. So your homework for this podcast episode, and I am making this a worksheet for you. So if you want to get the worksheet to kind of help you work through this, you can use it on your phone and just type in your phone, or you can take it into your computer, download it, whatever you want to do. You can get that worksheet by going to show notes. There will be a link for you. So what I want you to do is to start with, what is causing all of this angst? What am I most worried about? Is it the virus itself? Is it the economy? Is it my job? Is it that I don't have a job or that I'm working in a hospital? Whatever it is, write down your concerns. Next, write down what you do have control of. What you do have control of, and take control of those things. Third, what you don't have control of, the outcome. You don't have control of the outcome, but you have done all you can do. You have controlled what you can control, and you're going to let go of the outcome. In fact, I wasn't going to share this, but I'm going to share this because this is a really powerful thing for anxiety. If you can actually visualize yourself holding a balloon, this works, truly works. Visualize yourself holding a balloon, and that balloon is that outcome. Just close your eyes. Think about the thing that you cannot control, the outcome. And you'll kind of focus on that, breathe through that, and then you'll focus on letting it go. And as you focus on letting it go, I want you to literally watch the balloon in your mind's eye floating away. The outcome that you do not have control over, floating away. This is a really powerful exercise. If you take longer than what I kind of just did for you really quickly, if you just take a moment, maybe 2-3 minutes to really visualize that, that will really make a difference for you as well. Okay, then second, after you finish that list, after you finish what you can do, and once you've taken those steps to do what you can do, to control what you can control, find that checkpoint person. If you still have something that is really weighing on you and you really feel like worst case scenario and I need someone to talk me off this emotional cliff, go to a checkpoint person and say, I've got to be honest with you. Is this going to happen? This is what I'm worried about. Is this really going to happen? And they can help you walk back through, that's not the most probable scenario. It's just not. That can be hard sometimes. I've thought about sometimes where, I'm like, Mom, if I turn left, am I going to actually die? And she can say, well, people get in car accidents all the time. So is that something that can happen? Yeah, it can happen. Is it probable that this particular left turn is the one that is it for you? No, it's not. I hope that these tips helped you. I have some really, really good guests coming up. So later on in the week, you are going to hear from a woman who created a workshop called Apocalypse Mastery. It's not about a real apocalypse, but it's about what we're in right now. How do we still find growth? How do we find peace right now when there is so much unknown and there's so much that is scary? And I think that's going to be a really great episode. So make sure you're subscribed. I don't want you to miss it. It's so, so good. And with that, I'm going to let you go. And I want to thank you so much for being here on Happiness in Progress. Stay safe out there.